After an injury, the body learns dysfunctional movement patterns to avoid pain while the initial injury is healing. Once healed, these patterns of self-preservation become the source of most post-injury pain and repeat injuries. The SUJO method restores the original muscle action. It fixes improper muscle movements and reflexes, resetting them to their natural state.
My name is Summer Jones, and the method is the SUJO method. I'm trying to develop a method that really reflects how the body takes in information and acts upon it.
Summer is like if you knew like some old great giant of medicine or something, like when they were still like figuring things out.
I've never heard anyone talk about the body the way that she does.
Summer has really taken the time to develop her own method. The result is pretty extraordinary.
I think I've always thought a little differently. I'm not a physical therapist. I grew up training in classical ballet, and I was able to get a full scholarship to go to New York City and studied at the School of American Ballet. I got the Rockettes. I got into Radio City Music Hall's Christmas Spectacular. In my early 20s, I fell and hit my head, and so was bleeding when I went out with some friends. I was diagnosed with narcolepsy, and so I would fall, and my body would get very inaccurate. I walked away from a Dean Scholarship at Fordham. I had an internship to NASA that I chose not to do. I quit dancing, but in the meantime, I gained some fulfillment helping others.
I was incredibly active. I ran all the way from grade school through high school competitively.
I started ballet at 6, and I danced until I was about 16 years old.
SUJO is specialized for the specific ailment, but there's an underlying philosophy and a way of approaching the body that is universal for everyone. I work with athletes, dancers, regular people. I've worked with postpartum women, the construction worker hour, they were marching around in boots for many, many years, so they had a lot of knee and hip issues. Law enforcement, they wear the vest that causes them to have breathing problems and then back problems.
I pulled my hip flexor when I was like in 7th grade, and I was out for 2 months. I was injured a lot. Dancing always hurt me.
I had very little flexibility. So as a result, I constantly had torn muscles.
Sometimes I've worked with people who've received a diagnosis that involves them not being able to move again or function in certain ways. I take that as a starting point. I don't take that as a finish. Of course not. You know, what are we here for?
I was a diver, then I was a Navy SEAL. It started out as me falling and tripping. Then I went to the doctors, and after doing 9 days of every test you could possibly think of, they told me I had Lou Gehrig's or ALS.
The accident actually happened after a training run. And the woman going twice the speed limit hit us from behind while we were stopping to let somebody into their driveway. So she had us going about 60 miles an hour on a back road. So they took a picture of my spine, and they saw that my spine had been broken.
Then one day I was in the bathtub and I almost couldn't get out. I got a neurological disease called neuromyelitis optica, which is a demyelinating disease of your spine. So people can go blind or they can be paralyzed.
Had surgeries on every major joint, ankle, knee, hip, spine, 2 shoulder surgeries.
I eventually had balance problems and weakness problems, and had damage to my spine that caused me to have constant pain.
I also just had a baby. I was in pain all the time, but picking up my son was excruciating. And I couldn't sit down and play with him either, because he was crawling, and he was starting starting to get more mobile, and I was terrified of what would happen if I couldn't get to him in time before he got to something dangerous.
I mean, I was stiff, in constant pain. Like, to get out of the car, I'd have to lift my leg to get it out because I couldn't lift my leg, you know, like using my body.
I did physical therapy. I did iontophoresis, where they just I don't even know, shoot something into your tendons, trying to get the inflammation down. But I just always wound up with burned skin. After that, I stopped dancing. That was, I mean, heartbreaking. It was a huge part of who I was. I danced 6 days a week for 2.5 hours a day.
I went to the tuning fork lady, and I went to the acupuncturist, and I went to a silent healer in Northern California, and I went to anybody who said they could do anything that would be mildly helpful, all to relatively no avail.
When you go to a doctor, if they don't know how to fix you, they just tell you, sorry, medicine doesn't know this. We don't know how to fix you. I mean, everybody's had that experience, like whatever it is, right?
And I was hobbling around the office when somebody who knew Summer said, just take your lunch break and go see her.
With SUJO, there's no diagnosis or injury or impact where it would not be able to be applied to some benefit. I think of the body differently, so I like to look at basic reflex patterns. I look at how those patterns build and can become a little dysfunctional, or your body can get caught in a certain pattern. They can be habituated. And then I help a person eliminate unnecessary reflex patterns.
And she showed me how to push a stroller and how to pick up my son, because that's what I was dealing with. And it was like, it wasn't, oh, here are these, leg lift exercises that you can take home for PT or something like that. It was, okay, what are you doing every day? I'm picking up this monster of a child. My son's huge. And so that's what I'm doing every day. And she's like, okay, well, let's start there. Since I've started seeing Summer, I am pain-free. I get to bike with him and jump on the floor and lift him up in the air. I can still, he's 40 pounds, and I can still throw him up in the air and catch him and swing him around like every parent should. And I'm tired at the end of the day, but I'm not in pain.
Well, after my diagnosis, everything kind of went downhill. I couldn't use my hands, I couldn't hold nothing, couldn't move my legs hardly at all. Like laying in bed, not doing nothing and everything, just waiting to die.
The doctors say ALS is incurable, and also you cannot change the trajectory of the illness or the symptoms. Usually people with ALS will die of suffocation, more or less. They lose the ability to breathe. The muscles, the diaphragm ceases to do the movement of a diaphragm. My goal was to change that.
Since I've been working with Summer, I can now use my hands. I can lift my hands, I can put my hands over my head. I seem to be breathing a lot better and easier. And the last time she was there, I actually pulled over to the kitchen counter, and I actually pulled myself up, leaning on the counter.
The booty is up.
My boot's off. Last time I was able to do that was probably 5.5 years ago.
Since I started the SUJO method, for the first time, parts of ballet didn't hurt, which was kind of miraculous. And it was fun. It was so fun again. SUJO is successful because Summer is a genius.
The doctors don't believe that I'm bending over, doing things with my legs, lifting my legs, my arms, my hands, breathing a lot better.
As a doctor, knowing what would be expected from a person with ALS, it's flabbergasting. It's really, really surprising.
There it goes. That's exciting.
That's great. Told me I had 2 to 3 years to live, and here it is 6 years later. Not ready to die yet. I figure I got at least another 20. I do believe with Summer's healing, like she was saying, I'll be standing up and walking again.
Before I met Summer, I never expected ballet would be able to come back into my life in a sustainable way.
I never imagined that my life would look like this again.
My family loves it now because they don't have to open my beer cans for me now. I can open my own beer can and drink it.
If dancing has hurt you, and despite your love for it, and despite, how happy it makes you, it fights against you. It doesn't have to.
Basically, if anybody's injured, or if they're just having that thing where you're getting older and you feel stiff and you feel how come I can't bend over and tie my shoes as easily, you don't have to stay that way.
Don't accept that as the life that you have to live, and keep finding. What's the alternative? The alternative is living in constant pain. So find a different way, find some way.
If you don't do nothing, you're gonna die. You should try everything you possibly can, and so far I have tried a lot of things, and this is the best thing that I've seen so far.
The future is big for the SUJO method.
Oh, there we go. It's open. Right, you'll never forget this. This is priceless. Ah! You gotta drink some water.